Mr. President, there's no reason we're having this debate today. Freezing student loan interest rates for 1 year during tough economic times is something I believe we all agree on. So it should be relatively simple to accomplish. The President supports it, Governor Romney supports it, and a bipartisan majority in both the House and the Senate support it. Given this kind of agreement, I see no reason why both sides could not have a good faith discussion on where to find $6 billion in savings in a government with a budget that spends nearly $2 trillion annually. Actually, we spend more than $2 trillion annually. Now, I would mention that this bill has not been to committee. I hope that the American people have noticed that bills that go to committee and then come to the floor are usually successful. I hope they've also noticed that bills that don't go to committee and come to the floor are usually not successful. They're usually a political statement, and that's what we've got here again today. And this is how it works. You bring a bill that you know the other side has already, well, in fact, this body has already voted on this concept of this tax before and defeated it. But they know that we're particularly upset about this kind of discrimination against the businesses that are starting the jobs in America. So they know that with that provision in there, this common interest will fail. So why do they do it? Well, you notice that this is a motion to proceed and requires a cloture vote. So 40 of us can stop that bill, and will stop that bill in the condition that it's in without having gone to committee. But when we stop at things, you see those Republicans think that students ought to be paying more interest. That's the part that's wrong. The part that we're disagreeing about is how to pay for it. Pay for it? We have an economic judgment day coming in this country because of the debt that we're running up on a daily basis. I'm not sure what's going to happen now that France has decided they're not going to have austerity and Greece has decided they're not going to have austerity. That's what put the world into kind of this funk anyway. And now they have leaders that say that they're going to fight any kind of austerity. Could put the world in a real crisis. But what we're talking about is whether to keep the student interest at the low rate that it is right now. And we're going to have to vote on a bill that we're going to have to defeat because of the pay-for on it, which will make it look like Republicans want to raise the rates on students. And that's not true. But the majority prefers to pick a fight rather than help the students during these tough economic times. And what do I mean by this? After initially reaching out to my staff, indicating their willingness to work toward a bipartisan solution, they leaked their proposal before talking to us when it contained the offset that they've got in here. There could be a solution. We have to counter with one and ask that there can be two side-by-side bills. That means that we can have one that they vote against, so we can say they didn't want to keep student rates low, which is also wrong. But somehow we've got to figure this out, and we've got to do it in a bipartisan way, and that means that probably neither suggestion that's up there right now is the one that's going to work. The majority would have Americans believe that the bill simply closes a loophole used by wealthy doctors and lawyers and other professionals that organize as an S corporation in order to avoid payroll taxes. Well, let me tell you about taxes. If you're in one of those small business S corporations, you pay your taxes. You pay it on the year that the company earns it, not the year that the dividends are distributed. The year that the company earns it, you pay all of the taxes that are due on that piece of money. Even though you have to leave it in your business so you can keep reinventing your business, so you can stay in business, so you can maintain the jobs that you already have, and hopefully add a few. That's what an S corporation does. It says, we're going to give you this big break. We're going to let you pay your taxes up front even though you can't take the money out. But what we're talking about here is payroll taxes. Now, payroll taxes are the money that all of us put into as an investment for our Social Security and our Medicare. That's what payroll taxes are. That's what we're talking about now, charging on this money that up front has had all the income taxes paid on it, and incidentally, have also had payroll taxes paid on it. The IRS is already given the authority to check and see if people are taking out a de minimis distribution. There's an amount you have to take out of your business, and you have to claim it for salary. You can't just hide it if like you were rich or something. Doesn't work that way. The IRS has rules. The IRS can claim those payroll taxes. But what we're talking about now is taking those payroll taxes. Payroll taxes, remember, are Social Security and Medicare payments. They're investments in your Social Security and your Medicare. We're talking about taking those and subsidizing student loans. Medicare is in trouble. And once again, we're talking about stealing from Medicare. We did that in the health care bill. We took $500 billion out of Medicare, and we put it into new programs. We didn't put it into a doc fix. You keep hearing us talk about the doc fix. We're not paying the docs enough that they want to take any new Medicare patients. Well, we didn't take the money in Medicare that might have been used and used it in Medicare to keep the Medicare system growing. No, we put it into new programs so that we could say that this health care plan was paid for. That's what the payroll taxes are. Now we're saying we're going to use those payroll taxes and we're going to use it to subsidize the student loans. When does Medicare ever get the money to pay for Medicare? Oh, that's right. We have a new board now, an unelected board, and this unelected board will tell us each and every year where we have to cut in Medicare in order to pay for Medicare, even though we stripped all this other money out that could have paid for Medicare. What a deal. Well, here we go again. This tax would end the payroll taxes and by shifting them into the student loans. When we're talking about pay-fors, we do all kinds of crazy things around here. And we shouldn't be doing it. We should be a little bit more straightforward, not just with the students, but with the American taxpayer. In reality, this is an irresponsible tax increase on small businesses at a time when we need small businesses creating jobs so college students have employment opportunities when they graduate. In Wyoming, S corporations are family-owned small businesses working hard to keep their businesses afloat. As I mentioned, they get to pay their taxes even if they can't draw the money out and use it. So, for instance, small motels, small architecture firms, and groups of engineers might choose to operate as S corporations. Or they could be a full corporation, and then they'd have some of the same benefits that Warren Buffett has. You know, Warren Buffett makes millions, and he doesn't have to pay payroll taxes on that. But we didn't suggest ending Warren Buffett's payroll tax-free money. We're only going to do this to the small business corporations. Sounds fair? I don't think so. So this will also hurt family businesses in another way. For example, a son who's taking an accounting practice from his father could be hit with substantial payroll taxes if he owns, for example, 10% of the firm, while his father, who's no longer active in the business, retains the other 90%. These are not the tax scofflaws that the majority suggests this law will impact. They're really small businessmen that are the fabric of the American economy. The small businesses account for 65% of the 15 million jobs created between 1993 and 2009. 65% of the 15 million jobs created between 1993 and 2009. So rather than increasing taxes on small engineering and accounting firms, we should be encouraging these businesses to hire new employees. As a former small businessman, I know this will not happen if we raise taxes on the very businesses we depend upon to turn the labor market around. So recent reports demonstrate the need to encourage rather than inhibit job growth and creation. That's what we're talking about, jobs. This year, more than 50% of the college graduates are either unemployed or underemployed. Graduating in a bad economy where jobs are scarce and lower wages are the norms can have a negative economic consequence for up to 15 years. With the cost of higher education increasing more rapidly than the median family income, there will continue to be greater dependence on student loans. Unless the economy improves, there will also be a lesser chance that going forward, graduates will have the resources to even make minimum loan payments. So the Republican alternative puts forward a solution that takes money out of, and I know that the Senator from Iowa hates the word, a slush fund, but it's a fund with rather wide possibilities, and a fund that can be designated by the Secretary. So, and this isn't the first time that this has been used as an offset. Our president signed legislation that cut $5 billion from the fund to offset that payroll tax bill. Now, we're talking about payroll taxes here again, but we're not talking about, our side's talking about using the same source the president used for the other ones. So the president also proposed to cut an additional $4.5 billion out of that fund when he submitted his budget for this year. So I had to go and look and see what some of the uses are for this fund that we'd be cutting into, because it's spent at the discretion of the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and there aren't a lot of guidelines. Many of the programs funded by this Prevention and Public Health Fund, often called a slush fund, duplicates existing health programs or wastes taxpayer money on some frivolous programs. The fund has wasted millions of taxpayer dollars and even supported potentially unlawful lobbying activity. For instance, a public health clinic in Nashville, Tennessee used money to offer free preventive services for dogs and cats, not women and children. $3.6 million went to the Minnesota Department of Health to create at least 4 regional food policy councils to increase the access and available of affordable, healthy food. $8.4 million to the New York Fund for Public Health to implement a local tax on sugar-sweetened beverages. $3.3 million to the Washington State Department of Health to increase local control, preemption of tobacco marketing and taxation, and support legislation that repeals preemption of tobacco marketing. $3 million to lobby lawmakers in New York for legislation requiring chain restaurants to publicly post the amounts of the calories they serve. $7 million to the Jefferson County, Alabama, to urge Alabama lawmakers to raise tobacco taxes. $16 million to the County of Los Angeles to help secure a ban on new fast food restaurants around Los Angeles. A lot of that's lobbying activity. Yeah, I suppose that the end result could be prevention of health. This country is coming up on an economic judgment day. We don't have extra money laying around. In fact, when we're talking about pay-fors, we're only talking about paying for whatever new is put in. We don't talk about how we're going to cover the $15 trillion in debt that we've got out there, the $49,000 that every man, woman, and child in the United States owes. It's a heavy burden. I talked earlier about Greece. Greece only owes $39,000 per person. They're just not trusted as much as the United States. But if we keep running up that debt, we're not going to be trusted either. So, unfortunately, President Obama and the congressional Democrats would rather play election year politics than find a solution that focuses on the immediate need of America's students and their families. Neither bill is ideal. Each spends 10 years of savings in 1 year, and neither produces a long-term sustainable solution. However, the Republican proposal has the benefit of using an offset previously used by the Democrats, as I mentioned. The $5 billion from that fund was used to help pay for the extension of the payroll tax holiday, and then in this year's budget, he has another $4 billion. The Democrat bill raises taxes on small businesses at a time when the nation needs those businesses to be creating jobs so college students have employment opportunities when they graduate. And it's really discriminating against small businesses because it doesn't take in corporate dividends that people get, which are the same thing. It's the dividends that they eventually are able to take out of a business, but a big corporation pays dividends to the investors, and those don't have payroll taxes taken out either. So no sincere attempt was made by the Democrats to find a bipartisan solution. Both Senator Reid and Senator Harkin reached out to my staff to inquire about the possibility of finding a solution. My staff expressed a willingness to discuss possible offsets, but the Democrats released the details of their proposed S-corporation tax prior to any meeting. Now, when my staff did meet with Senator Harkin's office, his staff indicated the S-corporation offset was the only offset the Democrats were willing to consider. That makes compromise pretty difficult. Senator Reid has filed for cloture on S-2343, this bill that we're talking about, the Democrat version of it, and a vote will be held tomorrow at noon. And at that point, we've been told that our version, even though we're the minority, so unless we pulled some majority people over, would not have a majority vote, and if they all voted together, theirs would win. But we've been told that we're not going to have a vote on our bill at all. So that's to make it look like when cloture tomorrow fails, because there'd be no opportunity to put any amendments on this bill, and this is not a perfectly drafted bill. This is something that was put together in a bit of a hurry without having bipartisan input. You know, the reason we have 535 people in Congress is so that there are a whole bunch of different viewpoints. The reason we have 21 people on a committee is so that there are 21 viewpoints that go into the bill and can see what unintended consequences there are. Didn't happen on this bill. This has been put together by 2 or 3 people or half dozen staff members or whatever, I'm not sure. But it has not had the input from both sides. So our side had to come up with a bill that follows the same procedure. And I can tell you that neither bill is ideal. And a solution has to be reached for these young people. And we're all agreed on that. We're just not agreed on how we pay for it. And we do have a problem with paying for things around here. So I urge the majority leader to pull the bill from the floor, sit down with us, find a solution that all can agree to. And this isn't an issue over election year politics that should prevent us from reaching a bipartisan agreement. I'm not aware of anybody that's opposed to the extension of the reduction in the interest rate. And incidentally, that's not an interest rate reduction to everybody. It's only to those who have subsidized loans. If you're a student who has regular loans, you're not getting to participate in this, but that would require a lot more money to do it. So again, I urge the majority leader to pull this bill, sit down, come up with a solution that both sides can agree on. It's getting tougher and tougher to find pay-fors because we're getting further and further in the hole, and we're not going to stop digging, so we better start digging together. I yield the floor.